Hello, and thank you for joining me for this live. I am going to be talking to you about the moon and the menstrual cycle. And so we're going to be going into how to align with the natural rhythm of the moon, and this is going to promote greater harmony and balance for your mind, body, and spirit. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Dominique D. I am the founder of Holistic Yoni Care. And my mission is really just to provide women with as many resources as possible for self-healing, self-empowerment, and growth. And, I have some pretty exciting things to announce in the coming weeks about building more of a virtual community so that we can come together and really discuss stuff like this in more depth. So anyway, as I said, tonight we're going to be talking about how to align with the natural cycles of the moon. Now, why is this important? This is important because the moon has such a magnetic pull on the earth. There's this dance between the moon and the earth that happens kind of in the background, and the effect is quite subtle, but there are other times where it's a little bit more dramatic. And so the moon definitely has an impact on our emotions, how we feel about ourselves, how we show up, how we make decisions, and also our physical body. And we'll go real deep into that in just a moment. I'm going to be breaking down the phases of the moon and how you can literally see this play out in the physical body. So this video is particularly for women, and it doesn't matter at what stage of the growth cycle you're in, whether you are menstruating or you are no longer menstruating, this information is still applicable to you. So I hope that you enjoy this. I want to call it a deep dive, but I'll say it's more of an overview into the lunation cycle. So, first of all, let me break this down. I have some notes here. We're going to talk about the lunation cycle, right? Which is this movement of the moon. So the moon has a roughly 29-day cycle of a rotation around the earth, which it goes through each of the 12 zodiac signs. And at this time, as the moon waxes, meaning moving away from the sun, it reflects more of the sun's light, and then it wanes, reflecting less of the sun's light until it rotates all the way back around to where the sun is. And so this process is called the lunation cycle, and there's many ways to break it down. I've broken it down into 4 major phases. So we're going to be talking about the new moon, the first quarter moon, the full moon, and the last quarter moon, what each of those stages mean, the significance of them, what's going on during those phases. And the reason this is important, like I said, is because this is all about timing. And so, the goal here is really to move more in alignment with the natural cycles of the earth, because when we are aware of how we're being influenced by these subtle vibrations, it makes us more equipped to deal with day-to-day life experiences, changes in our bodies, changes in our environments, how we interact with people, how our goals and our values shift, our priorities shift. If we're unaware of what we're being influenced by, it makes it a little bit harder to be consistent in the way that we show up and respond to things, right? So the moon is an energy that kind of governs the way that we react and respond to life. It is more about the subjective nature of life and the subconscious mind. And these are the real drivers behind all of the decisions we make. So in astrology, a lot of times people are very aware of what their sun sign is. They'll say, oh, I'm a Taurus, or I'm a Gemini, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. But if you are a woman, it is very important to know your moon sign, because the subconscious is really what's driving your conscious behaviors, the impressions that things make on you, how you make decisions. And so it's kind of a big deal. So to bring this back into focus, let's start by talking about the lunation cycle. We're going to start with the new moon first. So the new moon happens when the sun and moon are conjunct. In other words, they are kind of aligned together. And this is when you don't see the moon. It's dark. We also call this the dark moon. This is the beginning of the lunation cycle. And new moons are all about new beginnings, new birth. This is a time where we are sowing seeds of intention, deciding what it is that we want to manifest in our lives. Some people, believe in the school of thought that the new moon sets off a 14-year cycle or a 7-year cycle or a 29-year cycle. Or you can just say that for the next 30 days or 29 days anyway, until the moon comes back around to where it is, this is also a cycle. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And so the beginning of this cycle is symbolized by the new moon. And during the new moon time is very interesting, is corresponds with menstruation, right? So menstruation, the beginning of the menstrual period. And I know that not every person menstruates on the new moon, and I'll explain why. That has a lot to do with the amount of natural light that we absorb and also our stress levels, right? So there's so many things that can shift the timing of the menstrual cycle. And that's what this video is all about, because this is all about coming back into alignment with the natural rhythm of the earth. So again, nothing wrong if you don't menstruate on the new moon. It's not that big of a deal. But so if you have more of an indoor lifestyle and you're not getting as much natural light as people were, let's say way back in the days where we lived in an agrarian society, right? Then chances are you may not menstruate on the new moon. If you go outside, get more daylight, make sure you watch those stress levels, get some more rest, you'll notice shifts in the timing of your menstrual cycle. So I challenge you to kind of play with that and see how you can tweak the timing of your menstrual cycle if that's something that appeals to you. So anyway, going back to the new moon, this is the beginning of the menstrual cycle. And if you think about it, this is a time where we are releasing. This is a time of cleansing and regeneration at the same time. There's two processes happening. So in this dark moon phase, we are really sowing seeds of intention into very fertile soil. Soil meaning the mental atmosphere from which we are going to manifest our intentions. And so from there, about 7 days later, we have the first quarter moon. Now, this is when the moon has rotated to a 90-degree angle from the sun, which is called a square aspect in astrology. And at this point, you'll notice the moon is half lit. So it looks like kind of a shape, kind of like this. So half of it's lit and the other half is not. And this is halfway to the full moon. So at the first quarter moon, this is when we are experiencing some sort of adversity or some sort of challenge that when we overcome this, it helps us to gain more insight and learn some kind of a lesson to develop wisdom through experiential knowledge, right? So that we can refine that intention and make sure it's truly in alignment with our integrity and what it is we want to do. So this doesn't have to be some major crisis. A lot of times it could be something that's barely noticeable, maybe just a minor frustration, but usually that's what's signified when we reach the first quarter moon. On a physiological level in the body, it's very interesting. Anytime between the new moon and the full moon, that first 14 days of the lunation cycle, this is the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle. And what happens around this time, maybe 10 or so days into the menstrual cycle, you are developing follicles inside your ovaries. So anywhere between like 5 and 20 follicles will develop. And what happens in that process is that you're developing mature eggs through these follicles. And not every single follicle will succeed in this process. So here we go with this theme again of adversity, overcoming some kind of a challenge. It's kind of like the first one to the finish line. That's the egg that's going to make the cut. And so only one of those follicles usually will release an egg at the full moon, a mature egg. So imagine you have 20 follicles, right? And 19 of them, for whatever reason, fail, but that one breaks through. It's been refined. And so this again is that parallel of how you can see this process of refinement through adversity through that first quarter moon, that square aspect with the sun. So as the moon rotates a little bit further, it's still waxing, moving further away from the sun, gaining more light. We are now at the full moon stage, and that's 14 days into the lunation cycle approximately. And at the full moon, this is a time of celebration, of release, of being able to release sexual energy, which is also creative or kundalini energy. This is also symbolized of that egg bursting out of a ruptured follicle, right? This is very specific in the body. And so this is a time of ovulation. And at this time, it's not really the best time to start something new. This is when usually you are making an announcement of something you've already started. You're bringing it to the light. The moon is absorbing the maximum amount of light from the sun that it could possibly absorb before it starts moving back towards the sun and getting darker and darker, right? And so at the full moon, it is a time of celebration. It is a time to release something. This is also a great time to partner up. Now you can do this in a romantic way, right? Again, this is the time of ovulation, and so this is the perfect time where you're at your most fertile stage, either literally or figuratively. This can also be platonic. So when it comes to starting new things, it's not that you should never start anything at the full moon, but perhaps something dealing with a collaboration where you are co-creating something with another person. That is actually an auspicious or an activity that would be supported by this energy. And so the full moon, again, looking at that parallel between the body, right, between what's going on in your yoni, this ovulation also corresponds with being able to put your creations out there, let them burst out into the world. Now, at the full moon, we can also be a little bit more emotionally reactive. We can also be a little bit more excitable, right? Because again, the moon represents our subconscious mind, it's our psyche. And so all of these things that are usually kind of hidden become very illuminated, very bright. The sun is shining a light on our subconscious mind. And so the things that have been hidden maybe from our awareness can be a lot more apparent through our behavior and the way that we show up, whether we're aware of that or not. And so this is why at the full moon, a lot of times we hear stories of the craziest things happening. You know, people tend to be a little bit more unhinged and wild. And that is a part of this natural cycle. And just before I move on to the next phase, I don't think I said enough about the first quarter. So at the first quarter, when it comes to whatever it is you're working on, right? Because I talked about how you set an intention of some sort at the new moon, something new you want to start. At the first quarter, again, you're just really refining and making sure that that thing that you set out to do, that you're really ready to put your full energy behind it and that it's aligned. That's the challenge. Full moon, you release it. It is a stage of completion. It doesn't mean that what you set out to do, that your intention is completely finished. Let's say you wanted to start a business at the new moon. Your business is not necessarily going to be at the peak of its success in 14 days. However, this completion is more like everything that you've put into this intention, all of the emotions, the thoughts, the work, the knowledge, the connections you've made, all of this stuff is going to crystallize into the very foundation of whatever this plant, this crop is that you're growing, this intention, right? And sometimes you may not even realize how many ingredients have been thrown into the pot. That will be evidenced in the fruit of whatever it is that you set out to do. And so now moving on from the full moon, let's move on another 7 days around to the last quarter moon. And this is when the moon again is hitting a 90 degree angle to the sun. It's on that final quarter, and that square aspect again is a little bit more challenging. But rather than testing to see if you are ready to put your all behind this intention. This challenge is more of an informed challenge, right? You've been through some stuff, you've learned so many lessons along this process, and you're going to take all of that wisdom that you have now, as opposed to just knowledge, but now you actually have wisdom, and refine that idea. You're going to be able to take any new insights you've gained and maybe incorporate that to tweak your plans a little bit, to refine it, to make it better. And this is usually what's done at the last quarter moon. And this is the luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, when hormones are being secreted to really nourish the lining of the uterus, because remember, at the full moon that egg was released, and so the uterus is like, okay, come on, let's get prepared, just in case fertilization happens, we're ready to go. And so that's what's going on between the full moon and the last quarter, this nurturing, this creation that's been put out there. So whatever this intention is, you're working on it, you're putting nourishment into it. You're not so much creating and outlining it. That part's already been done, but this is more like the sustenance for the thing that you're creating. And so by the time you hit the last quarter moon, we're at that final turning point where the moon is going to start to grow a lot darker as it heads back to the sun. If you imagine staring at the sun from the Earth's perspective, the moon is quite small. So that's why you can't see it when it's a new moon, because it's sitting between the Earth and the sun. And at that point, it can honestly be said that the moon shows her true face, because the moon, as we see it, is always reflecting the sun's light. That's not light coming from the moon. The moon is dark by nature. And so in this dark phase, we really are invited to release things that are no longer serving us. Let go of things that have matured. Maybe when we originally set this intention, there's something that we thought sounded great, but we realize this is no longer a fit for what I'm doing. I'm adjusting some things, or maybe these people who I've brought with me, or this person, whatever it is that you need to release, or it could be an outdated belief system or ideology, a habit perhaps that is holding you back. During these last 7 days of the lunar cycle, as we head from the last quarter moon onto the dark moon, aka the new moon again, this is when we're really resting, releasing, letting go. And this time of the moon, honestly, is one of the most mysterious, and one that I find is very well researched. A lot of people tend to be very fascinated with the dark phase of the moon, of course, because it is the most real and authentic, raw aspect of the moon. This is where the archetype of the dark goddess comes in, right? And it can be scary in a sense, but also there's so much about the cosmic womb, that nothingness, but the all that we all come from manifests into reality. So this is a phase of death, regeneration, rebirth, all kind of happening in one. And so that last 7 days after the last quarter square of the moon is when you can do a lot of deep healing work with trauma. This is excellent if you are working with a trauma-informed practitioner or therapist that can help you really navigate that process. But yeah, working with deep trauma, getting in touch with your roots. If you have a mother wound or something like that that you're dealing with, it's a very good time for deep healing. So the reason I'm sharing this with you again is because when we move in alignment with the cycles of nature, it makes life a lot easier and things make more sense. If you are trying to start a new project, or saying, you know what, I'm going to start my yoni egg practice, and it's, right on the last 7 days of the lunar cycle, you might find yourself in a bit of an uphill battle that leads to burnout. Why? Because nature is saying, no, this is a time to relax, go within, do some introspection. You got to prepare, because we have a new moon cycle coming up in 7 days. So you have to be ready for that. And if you're in go mode all the time, you don't reap the benefit of that divine beauty rest, right? There's a reason they call it beauty rest. So anyway, just a recap. New moon is for new beginnings, the beginning of the menstrual cycle. The first quarter moon is when we're kind of hitting a turning point where things might be a little bit challenging. We have some kind of hurdle to overcome with that intention so that we can really make sure that it's the real deal by the time the full moon comes. Full moon comes around, that's the ovulation phase where we are biologically releasing an egg. And on an energetic level, we are releasing creative energy, right? This is the point where our subconscious, our subjective nature is the most illuminated. Time of great vulnerability, because things that are usually kept hidden and kept in the dark and kept secret are a little bit more visible. And so then moving around to the last quarter moon, this is when we are refining our intention and using wisdom. We're in that older kind of crone energy that's wise, that has foresight, but also has experiential knowledge and can see things from a bird's eye view without being so emotionally attached to it. And from the last quarter phase is moving into the dark phase. And I didn't say this before. In the dark phase, this is when, again, we're heading towards, if that egg is not fertilized, then what happens in the menstrual cycle? The lining that was prepared during that full moon to last quarter square is shed. And this is what we call menstruation. When that lining is shed, the egg is released from the body and the process begins again. So I hope that you have found this helpful. Now that you know a little bit more about the 4 phases of the moon, how that's reflected in the body, because of course we are just a microcosm of the macrocosm. Everything that's happening on a cosmic level is happening right here inside of our bodies. And so sometimes it's easier. The human body is so complex. We'll never fully understand everything, but the more references you can get, the better you can develop more self-awareness. And so learning astrology is honestly learning about yourself. It's a great way to learn about yourself and learn about what's happening in your body. And so when you're developing your Yoni Care practice, learning about the moon is definitely one of the first places, I would say, other than physically working with your egg, one of the first places to begin your studies, because it'll really help you to understand your own cycles, and you'll become more aware of how the moon's changing phases causes you to maybe perceive things a little bit differently, or you'll notice when you're a little bit more vulnerable. There's another layer to this, and I don't want this video to get too long, but just briefly, once you've got those phases of the moon down, that's the lunation cycle, the next step is to learn about what's called fertility awareness. Now, fertility awareness is really becoming keenly aware of the fertility cycle. I touched a little bit on it in the 4 phases of the moon, talking about what's going on in the menstrual cycle. But fertility awareness is more about charting every single day what's going on. So it's when you take your basal body temperature, you monitor your cervical mucus, and you can really hone in on when you're ovulating and when you're going through different phases, and you can learn so much about your fertility cycle. Your body is behind the scenes doing so many things that you barely notice, and you would be shocked if you were to actively track that every day. There's a great book called The Fifth Vital Sign by Lisa Hendrickson Jack, I think her name is, and she's amazing. She also has a podcast called, I think it's called Fertility Friday. So yeah, check that out to learn about fertility awareness, because once you have the lunation cycle down, then you can get into fertility awareness. Start journaling every day about what your body is going through. The next thing is to learn about more of the astrology. Do you know your moon sign? Have you ever looked your moon sign up? Hey there, I see you've joined, Lucia. Good to see you. So, looking up your moon cycle or your moon sign is a great way to gain some insight into your own personality and why some of the things have been the way they are throughout your own life. And you can do this by simply Googling moon sign calculator. You can pull up any moon sign calculator and just find out what your natal moon sign is. This means which zodiac sign was the moon sitting in when you were born. And then you want to look at where the moon is right now in any given moment, which sign the moon is in. All of this is going to give you information and insight into how you are being influenced by these forces outside of you. So, the more that we know about this, it's not so much that we can follow the moon, right? That's not the goal here, because we all have free will and it's our choice how we show up in life. But again, if we don't know what we're being influenced by, it makes it kind of hard to know, is this really me choosing to do this, or am I being influenced by something that's making me feel a certain way? And you'd be surprised how much these subtle influences of the moon can have a powerful effect on how we respond to different stressors or different events in our lives and how we make decisions. So the more you know about the lunation cycle, about your own fertility cycle, about your natal moon sign, as well as how the moon changes signs every 2.5 days of this 29-day cycle, learning about each of those signs, this is going to really empower you to be able to develop greater self-awareness. And ultimately, the goal is self-actualization, to make sure that you are in alignment with your purpose and standing in your power no matter what. So I hope that this has been helpful to you. And if you want, post your moon sign in the comments below. I'd love to hear what your moon sign is. Mine, of course, is Gemini. And so yeah, I will be back with more videos like this very soon. And until we meet again, take care.